Many thanks for staying tuned. It's still the conversation here on Lagos Television. Today, our conversation will center around local government autonomy and grassroots development. Of course, there's been ongoing debate on what the Supreme Court judgments really stipulated for the local government as well as the state, which has oversight on the local government. But a lot of people are of the opinion that if the local governments are given the liberty and the leeway, there should be development at the grassroots level. Is this just about the local government, or is this also something that needs to do with the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria as it is currently amended? The National Assembly is also looking at ways of amending this constitution to ensure that all that were captured during that Supreme Court verdict are also put in the constitution. But as it stands, where do we go from here? We have our guest in the house this morning. He's advocate for good governance as well as the Chairman Act Network. Thank you, Shegun Shokpiton, for being here on the program this morning. Let's start this way. If we take a look at the third tier of governments, that is the local governments, as currently as they stand in Nigeria, it should be the closest to the people, where ordinarily development should reach every nook and cranny of the state where they are. But as it stands today, would you say that local government still, as it should be, are they really the closest to the people?
Well, yeah, I would say so, because that it's a fact. It's a statement of fact. When we say local government is the closest to the people, I think the first part of that closeness is physical. Okay. It's the fact that where I live, the local government secretariat is right behind my house, and the chairman's office is right there. I know him. Under normal circumstances, ideally, he should live around me. His house is somewhere within reach. The same can be said of the governor of the state, for example, who's in the state house, surrounded by, armed men. Right. You can't even drive past, the place without really going through some scrutiny. So in that sense, yes, the local government is the closest to the people. Also in terms of the impact of their actions, even in Nigeria, whether we like it or not, they are the closest to the people. A lot of the service failures, failure of government service that people experience in Nigeria actually emanates from the failure of governance at the local government level. Okay. So, for example, once you go away from the Trunk A roads and you move to the Trunk B roads, which are under the control of the state government, every other road is, under the control of the local government. So, we've got 55,000 kilometers of tarred roads, of federal roads in Nigeria. We have hundreds of thousands of tributary roads that are across all of the different local governments, and they're in terrible states. Right. Terrible, terrible states. That's as a result of the failure of the governance system at the local level. So again, from a negative point of view, yes, they are the closest to the people. Primary education, primary health care, all of those things are things that are supposed to be under the purview of the local government, and they're not really happening. So yes, they are the closest to the people.
So a follow-up to that will be, you've identified the fact that they should be the closest, or they are the closest to the people. But are they, in actual fact, being responsible to the people?
Yeah, so that is an interesting question, because the truth of the matter is they probably are not. And then, if you have ever visited a local government secretariat, for any reason, if you have any business there or you have friends there or whatever, you find that to a very large extent nothing happens there. And I think that may also be because, like you've asked, are they really responsible to the people? Are they accountable to the people? Are they afraid of the people? Their proximity, their physical proximity to the people, does it result in a fear, a desire to do the right things because they know that they are within reach? That unfortunately is not the case in Nigeria today. They are not accountable to people. They are accountable to the people that put them there, which in most cases are the state governors. So that is a problem, and it's the reason why this autonomy question is a big question that has to be dealt with in a manner that would ensure that development does begin to start from that level.
Okay.
As a Yoruba boy, I love the language because that's a way of actually speaking to issues. Yoruba people's Edeka Soju Abenko, the whole essence of having this grab for power in local government is the decision of the Supreme Court or the quest of Mr. President to have the local government have its own powers and money to function. So the court says, don't give them any allocation if they've not conducted an election. We know right before, way before now, that the local government or the chairman of local government have been used as a channel for winning elections, for manning voters. That's the whole essence of having the local government chairman, have them in power. But now, knowing that money is now coming there now, the grab for the local government is now in its frenzy and it's crazy. How will you say local government in Nigeria is meant for grassroots development when we know that it is how to grab as much resources or grab as many people that can influence either political decision or political influence as much as possible? So how is that grassroots development or local government autonomy when we've seen, I can cite so many examples. Rivers is still fresh in our minds. Overnight, all the allies of the governor are in APP when the governor of the state is in PDP. When did all the voters decide to vote for APP if it's not something different?
Yeah, and this is actually the biggest challenge for me with this autonomy question, especially with approaching it from a court ruling, because when that court ruling came and people were celebrating, I thought, is anything going to change? And we've seen it now, with what's happened in River State, and not just River State, Benue State, Akwa Ibom, about 8 states or thereabouts have held their local council elections in the last month or thereabouts, and many are still lined up to do the same. And what you've seen is it's business as usual. Nothing has changed. In the run-up to the River State election, and because of all of the controversies surrounding it and the battle with the Abuja forces, to put it that way, people had asked that, what was my opinion with regards to that election and the things that were happening there. And I said that I hope that the elections will be a departure from the past, and that the governor, being a victim of some sort of, attack, would have actually allowed democracy to have the day and let the people just decide what they want to do, in terms of selecting their own local government chairman. But we now know, obviously, that that's not what happened. The man has simply selected some people and they fielded them, and we've gone through the motions. It's been a ritual. At the end of the day, the people that have been put there are beholden to the governor, and they are going to do his bidding. And that's just it's a reality. It's unfortunate. That
is where democracy is supposed to start, supposedly. And you have a situation where there hasn't been any kind of rally. In fact, what we've seen is voter apathy. You have a situation where people do not really care. We speak more about Governor Sanwo-Olu or Mr. President as against the local government chairman in your local government or LCD, as the case may be in Lagos State. How does... I've heard stories of how it happened in the 70s, even when you have in the 60s or early 50s, when you have the council. That's when they had the Lagos Island, what's the name?
City Hall.
The City Hall. It was a local government that actually built that. You have Mushin, local mainland. You have chairmen that they were more even stronger than the governors, as it were. So how do we get to the position where we begin to have that vibe, that energy, that grassroots base that drives participation? Because honestly, that's what it's meant to do.
Yes, I think that we need to look at the selection process for these people, because as long as they are selected, in quotes, elected, but in truth they're selected by governors, then you really can't have a vibrant system that produces, strong personalities and strong leadership at that level. In other parts of the world, let's look at the United States, for example, where we've copied our own style of governance from. The local government level You know, so the governance starts from that local level, moves to the state and then the federal. What they run is a weak federalism, where the center is really an administrative structure that deals with their common issues, the border controls, you know, national security and all of that. Real power and the real impact on people's lives happen at the local level, you know, and what you find is that the people that run for local government elections in those places are successful people who have done well in their whatever private capacity they've existed in, and then they want to serve the people. You know, so here we basically have stooges of governors who typically will tend to be some elevated form of thugs or whatever that are just put in those places. So we need to fix the selection process and ensure that the best quality of people that we can have are the people serving there. So I said during the 2019 elections, for example, that the quality of people that we had jostling to become president, you know, some of my friends, you know, who ran on a lot of these 80-something parties then. Imagine if those 80-something people were running to be local government chairman. If somebody who has a master's degree, has succeeded as the MD of some private company or the other, now says, I want to be local government chairman in Ikeja local government or Imushin local government, and he wins. You know, just imagine the kind of development that we can see, because that person can muster all of the resources that is around and available to him, all of his connections in the private sector, you know, in government, and then put that to work at the local level to drive development. You know, but that can't happen because the governors determines who goes into that place for political reason. You know, so, and that's why I say, even though the Supreme Court has granted autonomy, we've got to look at the election process. And, you know, do we want INEC to conduct local government elections, or do we want to strengthen the SIEC? You know, for me, because I believe strongly in devolution of powers and a weak center, I would rather not have INEC, because I think INEC is not even doing well enough with the one they're saddled with. So SIEC should be empowered and made independent financially and administratively. So
how do you handle so many SIECs that we've seen across the country that just listen to the biddings of the person that appointed them into? So how do you handle that? I mean,
that's the thing. So I'd suggested, for example, that the chairman of every state independent electoral commission should not be appointed by the governor. Should be appointed by a council that is made up of government officials, judicial, members of the judiciary in the state, members of the legislature in the state, and private sector, civil society, labor unions. You form a council, recruit, get some sort of a shortlist, and find the best person to occupy that role, and then let the assembly approve that person. The governor should have no hand and no say whatsoever in that process. We need to find a way to ensure the administrative independence of these electoral commissions, and then also allow their funding to come as a first-line charge to the state's allocation from the federal account. If we're able to do that, then the SIECs can conduct proper elections, and then maybe we'll now see good quality people stepping forward. Now they won't, because they know that they can't do anything without, you know, the control of the government.
This is where, for me, the constitution amendment may also be needed here. The National Assembly, particularly the Senate, is muting the idea of looking at how all of these things can be looked into. For you, if this goes through and there is another constitution amendment catering to this particular situation, what are some of those things that you'd like to see, aside what you've mentioned now, that perhaps another board be constituted and these individuals be made to go through rigorous screening before they are finally appointed as state SIEC chairman? But for you, the National Assembly, what will be their role here, especially concerning the constitution amendment?
I mean, I think they need to, first of all, adopt what the Supreme Court has done, because I wasn't particularly happy about that ruling, because I thought the Supreme Court moved from the realm of interpretation of laws to the realm of making laws. And that's dangerous. It's a dangerous precedent that was set there, and it has to be corrected. So I think the first thing that the National Assembly needs to do is to adopt that Supreme Court ruling as a constitutional amendment. And then, you know, institute mechanisms for accountability and consequence management for electoral malpractice at that local level, at the state level. A situation where people, you know, don't conduct elections or rig the elections. If they are found, you know, the Constitution should be very clear with regards to what should happen to those people. I also think that all of the very good mechanisms that INEC has adopted for national elections must be cascaded down by constitutional amendment to the local level, to the CX, so that, again, we're depending on technology, we're depending on best practice electoral procedures to run these elections. And then, if we do that and then also find a way to ensure the independence of the CX from the state governors, I think we'll be making some progress. So unfortunately, again, we must remember that the National Assembly is responsible for making national laws. So,
I was going to come to now documenting these laws at the state level.
It has to then be localized or domesticated, to the local level. So, for example, the National Assembly can also make a provision in that constitutional amendment that compels the states to domesticate these laws, giving them some latitude for local realities and local peculiarities, but it should be something that is compelled by law, because if we don't do that, then nothing will happen. The state governors are going to influence their state houses of assembly, and they won't do anything. So I think that the legislature at the national level has a big role to play in ensuring that we can cascade this down to
But do you see this happening anytime soon?
If we put enough pressure. And I think the starting point is having conversations like this. Let's talk about these things. Let's provide suggestions to all of the stakeholders, National Assembly, state governors, state assemblies, the federal government, and so on and so forth. Let's provide solutions and ideas to them on what needs to be done. We have these conversations. If we have these conversations often enough, I think things will happen. It takes time for nation building to happen, and sometimes the mistake we make as a people is that we're impatient. We want to see those changes right now.
Right away.
We want it today. This conversation we're having, in truth, we may not begin to see the impact of these things in tangible terms, maybe in under 10 years. But that's okay, because it takes time. Yes, it builds up, and it takes time for these things to happen.
I may be wrong with my assumptions, but I think we have created the scenario that the people at the local government, because everyone in this country resides
in a local government. Absolutely.
We make the assumption that it's only the governor that has the say, and perhaps those that wield the powers or the political powers of the state. However, can't the people that reside in the particular local government have a say as to who they want? We've seen it happen before. It's not even in my lifetime, we've seen it happen in this country where people say, look, enough is enough. We don't want these people. This is the person we want. This is the person we are going to vote for. Can't we have, what happened to the mobilizers? What happened to those who can actually marshal the people at the local government level to say, look, this is about us. Money is now coming to the local government directly. Can we begin to talk about accountability? Can we talk about someone that we know from the local government who is not, who says he's from Mushi, but resides in VI, and we don't get to see him when he is elected as the local government chairman? Can't we have the local government mass movement of people at the local government? At least we know them. Isn't that possible?
It's possible, and it actually does happen, like you say. So we've had examples where people within certain local communities have insisted that this is the person we want, and the governor or whoever is the power that be in that environment has had no choice but to go with that, the choice of the people. But the problem with that is that it will be incidental, it will be localized, it will be occasional. What we need is something that is built systematically and systemically to ensure that it happens.
The Nigerians we have are bothered about so many things. So who is going to think about the local government chairman when he is finding he or she is looking for something to eat?
Yeah, I mean, and that's the problem with the structure of the Nigerian state today. We are so impacted by certain national policies that we forget that a lot is actually also happening close to us, and we should pay attention to who is the local government chairman, and we should pay attention to trying to hold them accountable. We simply don't do enough of that, and I think it's because people don't have any faith in that tier of government. They just believe it's just an appendage of the state, and they do the bidding of the governor, and that's that about that. So, in fact, it's not just a matter of them believing, they see it. because, you know, these people are right beside them. I've got friends in the local government system as well, and I tell you that what we see is not really encouraging. That tier of government is not working.
Right.
It's not working at all. You know, so people see this and they don't have any faith in it to then invest enough of their emotional energy and faith and hope in that tier of government. They're not interested.
They're not interested.
Yeah.
Interestingly, the state governors are somewhere there and are trying so hard to ensure that this local government autonomy does not work. Absolutely. Because for them, it is also a way to also have full control of the resources that come to the local government. Who is checkmating the governors?
You know, it's interesting because there are people who are strong civil society, good governance advocates who do not believe in the local government autonomy, who say that autonomy at the local level, Nigeria is not ripe enough for it because what they've seen at the local level is just pure, a complete lack of accountability and pilferage of the little. So what happens is there's a joint account with the state government. The state governor takes a lion's share of the money, leaves enough for them to pay salaries and all of that. So what then happens is that even the one for salaries gets squandered by the guys there, you know. So the question is, whilst we want to look at holding the governors accountable for what they do with the local government monies, we need to have conversations about how to hold the local government authorities themselves accountable, especially
for at least the
now.
little that they get.
Yes, for that little they were getting, but now that the Supreme Court ruling is now putting
so the bulk
billions of naira per
hands.
month into their hands, we have to have conversations about how we're going to account for that money. Right. Otherwise, it's just going to disappear. Yeah.
Okay, so, I mean, just a follow-up to that will be now that we're talking about grassroots development, because that's where we started from, that they should be the closest to the people. Yeah. And so if there's anything that should come from the coffers of the local government, should be governance at that level where they are the closest, and so they should provide the basics for the people. So now that they would or they should be getting the bulk of the allocations coming to them, would it still be business as usual? Because now there is no hiding place. You can't say that you're not getting the allocations anymore. So now that the monies are coming to you, it means that more responsibilities will definitely fall on your feet. Are they going to also be, will they be there for the people to question?
I think we have to see how this evolves, you know, because one thing we know is that the governors are not going to go down without fighting. You know,
one has held a press conference talking about how much they give to local government.
Exactly. You know, so they're not going to go down without fighting. They want to maintain a hold on that money. It would have. I wouldn't have had a problem with that if the objective of the governor was to ensure that development actually happens at the grassroots. Then I wouldn't have a problem with it, but we know that that is not the case. So whilst the governor is fighting to ensure that he still maintains control, we as the people need to then begin to have conversations on how we are going to hold this local government chairman and the council officials themselves to account, so that on a monthly basis, there are structures within the civil society space. There are platforms and structures that people can use, can leverage to report what is happening at the local level in terms of infrastructure development, schools. You know, if you see dilapidated school structures, if you see bad roads, you know, and all of that, they're reporting apps, you know, out there that can be used. So maybe we also need to project and promote some of this as well. My organization also has one that we've worked on. It's sitting there. We've been trying to work with the state government to try and have a collaborative effort where those things that are reported on that platform
can also get
can
to
then
the
receive
government.
attention, can get to the government and receive immediate attention. We've worked on that for a couple of years now, and it's not quite played out. You know, so if those types of things are deployed across the local government level, across the country, then we can begin to see some way of holding these guys accountable, because that needs to happen. We're talking about 30-something% of federal allocation going to this tier of government alone. It's a lot of money, you know.
Let's perhaps put aside the conversation about whether the governors have sway, whether they don't want to allow these people be all by themselves, or whether the people are so docile to understand that, look, this is government closest to you, or even the councillors in your local government. But let's talk about even that's what Yoruba, the interpretation, I can't say that more, but it means like when they say you're a thief, you shouldn't allow people to even keep money with you. So you have a situation where we have complained bitterly about the performances of local government chairmen. Now, fate has bestowed, whether you were selected, anointed, or whatever the case may be, or elected, now you're there. Can't you feel, can't you make yourself to even behave to help the people? Where does posterity, or is it just the blind eye that will turn when it comes to governance in this country? Should we go back to cultural orientation or value orientation, where we begin to see people that it's time, when they give you resources, you deploy it for the reasons it was given?
I mean, look, take River State as an example. Fubara just conducted elections, 23 local councils, 22 with APP, and one is with AAC or something like that. So we know what happened there. Fubara has selected 23 henchmen. What do you think is going to happen? They are going to be loyal to him. He's going to tell them what to do with the money, in spite of the fact that they supposedly have autonomy. They are going to do his bidding. So I think we're still some way of seeing that scenario that you painted, where the local government chairman is conscientized towards accounting, making himself accountable to the people, remembering that he's got a legacy. Perhaps maybe even seeing the local government, his local government chairmanship as a pedestal for him to then run for a governorship or something higher later as a result of his performance and the development efforts and strides that he's made. We're way off from that, because as it is today, the governors are still the ones determining who becomes the local government chairman. As long as that is the case, we can't really enjoy the fruits of this autonomy. We can't really see the grassroots development that should be happening, from the monies that are going to be deployed at that level. So the conversation regarding SIEC, and the selection process must now be raised to the, to the national level. Let's have that conversation. Let's force it. Let's force the issue. Let's ensure that local government chairmen are elected and not selected. Right. Let's ensure that it's a democratic process through and through. And then maybe we can begin to see that scenario where, the local government chairmen are afraid of the people. Right.
I like the fact that you emphasized on elected rather than selected. And you've also, during this conversation, given a timeline as to the fact that we're always in a hurry. And so we must begin to get to that time and realize that these things take time, and it is a process. So in our waiting period, as we continue to look at how things can get better, are we also able to get ourselves into that consciousness that this is not about politics, but about governance?
Absolutely. And I think that we all need to remember, like he said earlier, we all live in some local government or the other. Nobody lives on the moon. we all have a local government chairman that is supposed to be accountable to us. So ultimately, we do need to remember that this is really about us. It's about, the refuse collection. If you look at the way this thing works in other parts of the world, the core things that affect the population in those countries are handled by the local government. Right. So in Nigeria, who handles refuse? It's Loma in Lagos.
But it's the state.
It's the state, and it shouldn't be. It should be the local government that is responsible for things like, sewage control, refuse collection, basic education, primary health care. All of those things are things that need desperate attention. I mean, walk into the average primary health care center in this country. It's unfortunate. I would say it's a joke when you compare that to private hospitals. Why is that the case? The federal government is sitting in Abuja and is controlling primary healthcare centers across. I mean, it's ridiculous. 774. Look, how can they do it?
Right.
It's not possible. You know, no matter how adept you are and how, you know, great an administrator you are, you simply do not have the latitude to control all of that and ensure that each one of those 774 PHCs are working optimally. You know, so leave that to the local government.
Okay.
They now have the money. Let's ensure that each primary health care center at the local government level is well equipped, well, you know, with proper infrastructure, well-trained personnel. The money is there to fund all of that now, you know. So will that happen? We have to wait to see. But I think we need to continue to say these things so that the expectations are clear to the governors from the Nigerian people that we need to see development happening now as a result of this autonomy that has been granted to the local governments.
All right, before we allow you go this morning, very quickly again, just to talk about what should also be in the constitutional amendment. I know Joshua raised this earlier, and that's the fact that the governors are also able to bring in, and which was what we also saw in Rivers. But can we also expressly have it stated there, tenure? You know, a particular tenure for, I mean, it's 3 years,
It's 3 years.
as we speak, and you also have them either coming back or not coming back. And so all these things also very needed for clarification in that amendment.
If we want to run a federal system, then let's run a federal system. I think that the states should have the latitude to determine those things.
Okay.
But there must be laws.
Right.
So I think what needs to happen is that there should be a law enacted by the federal houses, by the federal legislature, that compels the states to enact their own local laws, and then maybe define basic minimum issues that need to be addressed in those state laws, and then we'll move. I don't think it
Because
will,
sometimes we also have caretaker committees come,
Yeah, I mean,
and then they stay
that's
forever.
absolutely illegal. You know, I mean, it shouldn't happen anymore.
Okay.
Thanks to the Supreme Court ruling.
Right.
But we have to go a step further. You know, there's so much work still to be done for us to begin to benefit from the fruits of all of this. But I think we need to get the legal framework right. And the Supreme Court, I think, needs to be wary of delving into lawmaking.
Okay. Interpretation solely is their
interpretation.
responsibility.
Well, but the expediency, the exigencies of the time has decided to make them, because if you wait for you to amend the constitution, you know how tedious, how long that takes.
We have to follow the process, you know, and that's why I said earlier that, you know, these things, nation building takes time. I think that we've got to avoid the temptation to cut corners. I know it's a Nigerian thing, we like shortcuts, but I'm not in support of the Supreme Court and this ruling they've made.
Okay.
Even though we're happy that local governments will have autonomy, I think the process is as important as the outcome.
Right.
Because if you follow the wrong process, invariably it will come back to haunt you.
Right.
You know, so
you still think that with this judgment, there's a need for the National Assembly
Absolutely.
to do the appropriate
They've got to adopt this as some sort of a law.
All right.
It could be an act or it could be an amendment to the Constitution. Either way, it has to be law made by the National Assembly, not a pronouncement of the Supreme Court.
All right. Thank you so much, Shegun Shokweton, for finding time to be here on the program.
Thanks for having me.
Right, that's the much we'll take on this segment of the conversation today. We'll take a quick break. When we return, it'll be time for the Lagos ladies to take us through their conversation.